Welcome to a new edition of the Market Reporters with Taco and myself, Martin.
Welcome.
As every week we discuss the market, and I think it was a week that we actually, how many times did we say to each other, what are we going to talk about? There was not a lot of news because we were actually spoiled with company news over the last couple of weeks. A lot of companies presenting their figures this week. Only HP, Hewlett Packard, they came with figures and they were really, really good because of a lot of people having to buy laptops and those sorts of things. So that was a positive thing. If we go through the week, what we saw was actually on Monday that the Asian markets did really well. Initially, they had a really good start of the week, specifically because Trump said that the ban on WeChat is not going to be so severe as he initially announced. And specifically Tencent went up about 4.5%, so that was positive. Also on Monday, AstraZeneca and the University of Oxford, they're going to get probably an approval for their vaccine already in October. So that is a positive thing. So the hope on a vaccine and the economical consequences that, basically that the coronavirus will be beaten, gave the market a push. Also on Monday, and you looked into that, a change in the Dow Jones?
Yeah, next week, the 1st of September, the Dow Jones will change. So, for example, ExxonMobil and Pfizer will lead the index, and they're substituted. Why is that? The Dow Jones has a very typical way of calculation, actually. It's since 1896, and it started with 11 or 12 funds, actually just the sum of the value of those shares divided by the number. Yeah. So just an average. Well, of course, in the time it has been changed a little bit, so we have now the Dow divisor. That makes that, for example, a stock split won't affect the value of the index itself. That would be strange.
But that's not very long, I think, no? The Dow divisor, and this because of course we learn this, but we forget about these things because every index has its own way of calculating the price, no? And for example, the DAX includes the dividend.
Exactly.
The Dow has
the Dow is really specific. Also the Nikkei, but it's criticized a lot because it's actually a little bit old-fashioned. But yeah, it is one of the most important. Indices still, the benchmark for lots of things. So yeah, they won't change it that easy. But it has to be changed sometimes because because of the stock split of Apple next week. That makes that the price of Apple will go get lower. More shares with a lower price. So nothing changed in the company, but that's the situation. And with this sum of the value of the shares divided by the number, that would make that the index would be lower. So there's now a correction for that. But what still,
which is I think obvious. Otherwise,
of course, yeah. But there is still a consequence that Apple now will have a lower weight in the index due to the fact that it's a lower price. So there will be some consequences. And the Dow Jones decided that the tech sector should be represented with a certain value in this index, and because Apple has a lower value, they change it. So now Salesforce, for example, will come into the index.
So the three companies that go out is
ExxonMobil,
Pfizer and Raytheon, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And they will be changed by Salesforce, Amgen, and Honeywell.
Yeah, exactly. So then, the Dow Jones can decide themselves who they want to have in the index, but they want to have the tech sector represented like with a certain part, and that's the reason that this change will take place the 1st of September.
Yeah. Also, of course, on Tuesday, maybe not so much to do with financials. The Netherlands, they declared, basically following UK already, Spain as an orange country, so a lot of people cancelling their flights, the late holidays, because we're at the end of the summer. I think we are here. What do we see in the street? It's more quiet than other years. And I think Spain is not that, it's also a lot of things what you see in the news, what the reality is, it's not unsafe here. I think the Spanish population is keeping up with the rules. A lot of people are, actually everybody is using the face mask. I think it might be safer here than somewhere else, just based on practical experience, exactly. Not so much but also on figures. If you look at the bigger cities in the Netherlands, but also in London, there's less people affected by coronavirus here than there are in number-wise than in the north of Europe.
Yeah, I had actually some clients calling from what is your vision about it, because they know we are sitting here and they read the news and they think that if you have a house here living, for example, in two countries, I think there's no problem to come. The only thing is if you are planning to get back within 3 weeks, then you have this quarantine thing. And to go on a holiday for 1 week, of course, that's something else, and you want to go out.
And then 10-day quarantine afterwards.
But if you have a house here, like you said, we don't see any problem to just be here and following the rules.
No. Also, what we saw on Tuesday was quite interesting, because initially you saw on Monday the Chinese markets going up. What we saw on Tuesday that India is actually phasing out all the equipment of Huawei, because they have another Chinese companies for its telecom networks, because they have an escalating dispute on the borders. So where we saw some positive news, so basically Trump tempering his mood basically against China. We saw that India now is attacking them from another side. So there's a lot. I mean, there's always something happening, isn't it?
Yeah.
On Wednesday, we saw on the Chinese market Alibaba shares jumping tremendously, almost 8% up. Why? Their financial department, of the financial part of the business, Ant Group, had really strong figures, and they are planning to do an IPO, so they're going to be public. Ant Group, the IPO is to be set as one of the largest ever. The largest ever last year was Aramco, Saudi Arabian company. Ant Group apparently is going to be even a larger IPO. So that's interesting to follow. Also interesting, I think, on Wednesday was the house price and the home price in the US. They held steady in June, and in July they actually went up a little bit. We saw the same thing in other parts of the world, in Europe, in the Netherlands. I think also in London the price went up slightly. So that is a strong signal, I think, from the economy. And then of course we had Thursday. All eyes were focused on what Powell was going to tell us, and it was a little bit dovish. He didn't come out with really clear words of what he's going to change. What the Fed actually does now is they're always working with rate hikes. So the hike with 0.25%, they start increasing, they start lowering. If the economy is not, they're going to let that go. So they step away from that old strategy, and they're going to be more focusing on just an inflation of 2%. Keep a strong employment. So unemployment is a very important trigger to do something with the rates. But what it actually means is that the determination of the US Central Bank basically signifies that we will be confronted with long-term low interest rates. I think that is what we can see, and that is almost similar as what we've seen in Japan. Japan is trying to do the same thing for over 30 years, and they have not been very successful. What we've seen is that the growth is stable, but there's no inflation. Prices are not going up. No? What else?
Thursday, Carrefour announced to locally to buy 172 Super Sol shops. So that might be something if you are in Spain.
Super Sol,
to see change on the wall.
And it's not a bad thing. I think Super Sol needs a bit of a wash up. No?
Yeah.
Also, I think interesting to mention is that Facebook is launching a dedicated shopping section to capitalize the rising wave of the e-commerce, and that is a bit in line with what Walmart is doing. Walmart said earlier this year that they want to compete with Amazon, and they said now yesterday that they're going to go and take a stake in the race on the takeover of TikTok. So you see that they're pretty serious about actually competing with Amazon. Another thing I think I want to mention, of course, Hurricane Laura. We saw that had a bit of that gave pressure on the oil price. One of the largest storms ever measured, but I think it just skipped. I didn't follow it that much, but I think
the damage was not
that big. No, so that thank God, because initially it was said it was going to be a 15 billion loss for insurance companies, which eventually is less, but that's maybe not the most important thing. Most important thing is that not a lot of people were affected, I think. No? To finish off with, of course, the race for the vaccine. We talked about it earlier. AstraZeneca, Moderna, Novavax, all companies. I think what the latest news is that by October, the first companies will get their approval. Yesterday, Abbott Laboratories, they said we're not going to compete in the race for a vaccine, we're going to do something else. They came up with a new test, which was bought by the US government, 750 million worth of tests they bought. and it's a test that takes 5 minutes and gives you the result in 15 minutes. So it's a specific test, and so they had a really good day yesterday. Prices went up 8.5%. Trump and Biden, they're competing. Trump is coming back. We said last week, and we forgot for our Dutch clients to mention that the race for the we were going to mention something every week about the elections.
Yes.
Trump is gaining territory. He attacked Biden really heavily like yesterday, saying that he will be a disaster for America if he wins. So he goes in with a, how do you say that in English? With a straight leg, as you say in football.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's curious to follow. They're more or less 50-50 now, I think. So interesting. Okay, I think this was it for this week.
Yes.
Thank you very much for watching.
Have a nice weekend.
And of course, if you haven't done so, please subscribe down below.